Alright, so this is take 10 or something. Today we're reviewing iPhone 12 mini, as you saw by that segment. This is a really cool phone. This is the first time that Apple made a flagship small iPhone, right? So a little bit of history before we get into the phone itself. We start with the original iPhone up to the iPhone 5s and the 5Ss, right? All of those phones were very small, but that's because people wanted small phones at that time, right? The iPhone 6 comes around and it's 4.7 inches, 5.5 inches, and it gets larger and larger and larger, right? So it stayed stagnant for a while, and then we had the Pros and the Pluses and all that stuff. But there was always a small part of that population that wanted a smaller phone that was just as capable as a larger phone. That's where this phone comes into play. So first, we start off with the most notable feature, which is of course the size of this thing. It's super small, right? And it's super light. We're looking at about 135 grams for this phone, a 5.4 inch diagonal display, which is approximately, think of it like an iPhone 8 Plus screen with the smaller size because of these really tiny bezels. This has a mix of an iPhone 5 design as well as an iPhone 10 design. And this was the first time that they've actually done this. So the iPhone 10 essentially took the iPhone 8 and added smaller bezels, kind of curved the sides, made it a little bit more premium. The iPhone 11 made it more mainstream, right? So instead of stainless steel and those kind of premium materials, they ended up using just regular aluminum to kind of take the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 and kind of combine them. This one actually goes back to those traditional flat sides right here, right? So we're looking at more of like an iPhone 5S feel, right? That's what this kind of feels like to me. And I have had the iPhone 5S, I've held it before, and it feels very similar to that, right? A little bit bigger, but it feels very similar. But the thing is, it's very, very light. So for the display, they did not skimp out on the smaller versions. This still uses a Super Retina OLED display, which is really impressive for a phone this small, and it looks really great. This is the same display that they use in the iPhone 12. So again, it's the same display shrunken into that small form factor, right? And that's kind of the theme we're going to start to see. Most of the specs that we see in the iPhone 12 are going to be found in this 12 mini. This gets about 625 minutes of peak brightness. Outside, you will notice a bit of a drop off, mainly because it does overheat outside. Because of the lack of space internally, there are certain thermal issues that come with this design, right? So in super hot conditions, like right now we're in Texas, about 100 degrees every day, right? If you go outside, peak brightness, 12 o'clock, it's gonna heat up and the brightness will kind of go down automatically. So this is a software feature by Apple to prevent thermal throttling within this model specifically. Now, unfortunately, there's still that notch on top, which we just recently got rid of, kind of, with the dynamic island on the 14. For most people, I think they won't really notice it. I think it'll kind of disappear. When watching videos, you do kind of have that black cutout on the sides, but honestly, it really doesn't bother me anymore. And even since the first day, so coming from a Galaxy S9, I definitely wasn't used to a notch, but when I got the phone, it wasn't really a big deal. So the notch up top also holds the Face ID scanner, which does work really well. So I've noticed essentially no delays, even in darkness, even with my glasses off, I've seen essentially no issues with this sensor. The only thing I would say is that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to actually lock onto your face. And kind of like, I'm not sure if it's the animation or if it's actually authenticating your face. But it does get a little bit annoying. I'd rather prefer just like using Touch ID. But so for the performance, of course, it's amazing. This is A14 Bionic, like every other Apple product. So it's super smooth. There's essentially no slowdowns. Occasionally there will be a slowdown just because it is, 2.5 years old. So there is a bit of performance throttling eventually. Now, the one place where you will notice slowdowns especially is again in outside heat, right? So this is again coming back to those limitations of a small chassis, right? So when it's really hot outside, or even when you're actually driving in a car and you have it plugged in with Apple CarPlay running in the background, Google Maps running, Apple Maps running, whatever, music running at the same time, it's gonna be super hot, right? So you won't be able to use it at max brightness for a while. However, I would say overall for most people, it's a pretty good performer. I don't think you'll notice a huge difference. Now for the camera, my focus was not actually on the camera as much. So for me, I do have this DSLR, which is what I take most of my photos with, honestly. But kind of for day-to-day activities, it does a great job. It does excellent in low light especially. So with that super amazing night light mode, it does an amazing job. Even in pitch darkness, you can actually see really great contrast in pictures. Video on this iPhone is definitely a strong point, way more than photos, because of this optical image stabilization that somehow just keeps it super smooth. It is insane how great of a job this does. So I almost forgot to add this in. There's two lenses on the back actually. One is a regular and one is ultra wide. And the ultra wide specifically is really cool. This is a feature they've kept for the newer iPhones as well. But I feel like the switching between the normal and the ultra wide in video, which you can do in video as well as like in the viewfinder, is really cool. The ultra wide is really useful actually. It looks great. I love it. It's one of my favorite features. Besides the video stabilization, it's probably my second favorite feature of the camera. So overall, it does have excellent quality. Personally, I don't really think you'd notice a difference between something like this and an iPhone 14 of a newer generation. Even though there will be specs that are, different, the camera will be better on paper. I really don't think for most people who are using this phone, except if you rely on this for more professional photography for some reason. So now we get to battery life. Now this is unfortunately one of the areas where this phone definitely does struggle in, because it physically does not have the capability for a larger battery, right? So we're looking at about 3 hours and 30 minutes, 4 hours of screen on time, which approximately translates to about a work day, right? So think about from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 p.m. you're gonna have 0%. So that's a little bit disappointing, especially because on some days I do want to use it more, but I physically can't. I need to carry around a charger or like a portable battery bank, which kind of does suck. You need to be leaving the house with 100%, right? You can't be like going off 50%. And this is something that the iPhones have progressively gotten better at. So the iPhone 14 Pro, lasts like way longer now. So overall, I'd say for casual users, right? Specifically casual users, I think this would be a great choice. For someone who kind of uses their phone for more basic tasks, I think this is a great modern choice. If you want a small phone that's cheaper, right? So the 13 mini obviously is a better phone. So it does have slightly faster specs. It has a better camera. It has a slightly larger battery that does make a difference. It's more optimized, newer, more updates, all that stuff. But if you're looking for a more affordable phone right now in 2023, this is a great option, right? So affordable iPhone, it's very small, very compact, it's very one-handable. So the mini series did get discontinued by Apple, so starting with the iPhone 14s. This is largely because of stagnant sales. And this again comes back to the point where this is not that popular of a device, and it never was, and it never claimed to be, right? This is a very niche device for people who want a smaller iPhone and aren't going to use it as much. So power users especially won't find much in this phone to actually use and take advantage of, right? So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the mini kind of failed by Apple standards. All right, so those are all my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the next one.